Hey, I'm Jon Thelen. Today on Fish Ed, I'm out trolling cranks. It's midsummer, and I'll tell you what, fish get out in the basin, and once they're out here, one of the things that happens is they can scatter out because there's bait everywhere. I mean, there's not as much reason for them to be schooled up as tight as they might have been earlier in the year. The best way to get to them is pulling cranks because you can cover a lot of ground and get the active fish. Stay right where you're at. Fish Ed's coming up. Ooh, there's one on there right now. Look at that. Don't turn away. Man, I was just looking around, looking at the graph. There's been so many fish, but it's one here, one there. You know, you find yourself looking at the graph and trying to guess how long until you come through those fish you just saw. And one thing I will say about this is, for the most part, these fish are in little packs. You know, I mean, they're scattered, but they are in little packs. I love this basin fishing because you get such a mix of fish too. I mean, you get medium-sized fish, you get big fish, you get dinner-sized fish. I mean, once they get out here, there's a little bit of everything that hits this basin, and it makes it a lot of fun. One thing about it though, is it can get a little bit tough to fish from a standpoint of getting baits down there and how you're going about getting to them. And that's what we're going to talk about today is, you know, how do I get baits to fish out in the basin, and what baits are the most effective when fish do get out in this basin, because they're not all created equal. Some crankbaits are going to be better than others once these fish get out into this stuff and they're just roaming around and there's tons of food. You got to really use something that's going to get their attention. Great eye to start our day. Nice fish. Look at that. Awesome. That's exactly how you want to start a day. Looks like that fish even got himself unhooked right when he hit the net. Look at that. What a beautiful walleye to start. Hang on here, buddy. I'm just going to show you to everybody. Look at that. What an awesome fish. That's what you can do when you're out trolling cranks in the basin though, right there. I'm going to get this guy back in the water. I'm going to get this line back in the water, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we're getting baits to him today. That's a great eye to start right there. We'll take that all day long. Get out of here, buddy. There he goes. Whew. That's awesome. That was a lot of line to reel in though. I'll tell you what, when you're doing what we're doing today, fishing lead core, you got a lot of line out there. And the reason I'm doing it is I'm fishing a big stick bait, and I'm trying to catch fish like that. I'm trying to catch your medium to bigger size fish today. And you're going to catch bigger fish when they get out here in the basin, when you offer them a bigger meal like this Bandit Walleye Shallow. But boy, I'll tell you, when it comes to crankbaits, I do firmly believe that bigger baits catch bigger fish, and that's what we're doing today. And hopefully we're just going to put a pile of those right there in the boat, and along the way find a few eaters for dinner too. That's a good start right there. You know, for so much of the year, we're focused on our mapping and finding walleyes based on structures. And this is that time of the year where it changes a little bit. I mean, I'm still looking at my map. I'm still looking for areas that may just drop a 6-inch deal, you know, out in the basin, a little something. But a lot of times, that's not what the fish are relating to. What they're relating to is just bait that's on the move, and it's just swimming aimlessly out in the middle of nowhere. And in a lot of our Midwestern systems, it's just because that's where the coolest water is. So all of a sudden, they'll just kind of show up on spots for no real reason. So I'm actually relying more on my sonar right now. And I'm watching that sonar when I drive, and I'm just looking for those little lines that shoot up that tell me there's fish there. And then I'll go through an area even slower and see and just make sure that those are fish down on the bottom. But now's that time where you do a lot of searching before before you ever put your lines in the water. We drove this spot this morning. We drove a little ways out there. We moved, you know, from the south coming north until we found this pot of fish. And there's a lot of fish here. This is a large school of fish. When I say a school, like I was talking about earlier, they're not really tight together, but they're spread out, and this might go on for a couple miles. And this one here, I don't even know that I've gone all the way to the end of where all these fish were, but ultimately it just comes down to trusting that sonar. When you see those fish, that's the area you want to troll, and a lot of times you just pick up, go with the wind, and I'm just going to troll until I go out of the fish. You go out of the fish, turn around, go back upwind and start over, but really location-wise, now it's not as dependent on those break lines as it was earlier in the year when they were tight to shore. It's not as dependent on rock piles. This basin stuff, it's really got more to do with just finding the fish. There's one right there. Ooh, that feels like another good one. Yeah, it's a big fish. You know, one thing, when you're pulling lead core, as much as you're tempted right now, because you know you got a big fish, as much as I'm tempted to slow the boat down, a lot of times if I can, I'll just do this. Just bring them slow and steady and take my time. And here's why. Lead core gets a little bit of bow in it, okay? This line is not perfectly straight to that fish. All he's got to do is make one little move one direction, and this line will get a little bow in it because of its composition, because of how it's made. It's actually just a coating, kind of a Dacron type coating over lead. And what happens is if all of a sudden you get a little bit of slack in there, that fish can swim toward you and put more slack in it. This is a good fish. This is a good fish. All right, we're at 70 feet. So let's slow this thing down just a little bit and bring them to us. Man, one thing about lead core trolling, precision is so important. And what I mean is when you find that sweet spot, and I found it right now, we're on that sweet spot. And what I mean is I know the exact speed I gotta be going. I know the exact amount of line I need out right now to put my cranks at the exact depth that these fish are hitting at. But that's part of the reason I use a line counter reel when I'm pulling lead core. Because while people will say, oh, you can just count colors with lead core, you don't necessarily need a line counter. I feel like you do, because I'm living on 5-foot increments a lot of times. I'm that precise when I find that sweet spot where that crank needs to be. Oh boy, it's a giant eye. Come here. Oh boy, I don't want to lose this one. This is a giant fish looking at me, and he's on that back hook. Giant fish. Look at this, got him. Whew. Look at this, this is a giant. Look at that fish. Got himself unhooked. That's all at 28, 29 inches. This is a giant fish, holy smokes. Man, that's one of the biggest eyes I have caught all year. That is just a giant, and I'm not surprised, I'll tell you why. Fish like this right here, they eat crankbaits. Whew, that is awesome. Let's get this girl back in the water, and I'm gonna show you the crank I'm using, because, I mean, it's deadly, and look what it just put in the boat. Holy smokes. All right, look at that. Right to the bottom. Wow. Man, I get fired up when I catch big fish. That's big fish. That's one of the biggest walleyes I've seen all year. Let me show you the crank I'm using here. This thing is just deadly when it comes to chasing big fish. This is a Bandit Walleye Shallow. Okay, now they make a walleye deep and they make a walleye shallow. This walleye shallow that I'm using right here has a bill on it that's gonna dive it 10 to 14 feet, somewhere in that neighborhood. But I'm using lead core today and I'm putting it down there way deeper. But it's got a pretty big wobble to it. Now the walleye deep has an even bigger wobble and it'll dive to 27 feet, but this walleye shallow, in my opinion, is just deadly on lead core. It's deadly when you're fishing that, 8 to 14 feet of water. I guarantee you, of all the boats out here today, I'm probably using bigger baits than most guys. This Bandit Shallow, it's a big bait. But here's the other thing that I think makes it such a big fish catcher. I want you to hear this. I want you to hear how loud that crankbait is. This thing is loud. It's grabbing their attention from a mile away. It's something they want to attack because it's a big meal. And that's why I'm fishing these baits today, because we're chasing fish just like that. And you know what? I always like getting one, but it's pretty early in our day yet. And to get that thing that early in the day is just cool. What an awesome fish. There's one right there. That feels like it might be a decent fish. You know, the neat thing about pulling big cranks too, not only do you get bigger fish, you'll fit in some fish like what I think I got on here too. You'll get some eaters that think they're tough, and you know, they'll jump in and join the fray. And this feels like one of those fish right here. I don't think this is gonna compare to some of them like we've gotten this morning, but boy, I'll tell you what, sure has been an awesome day on the water though. Oh yeah. Nothing wrong with this guy. Ah, he's not even as small as I thought. He's a pretty good fish, to be honest with you. That's a great walleye to wrap it up with right there. Look at that. Just when you start thinking you got a smaller fish, you know what a smaller fish is today? 20. You know, just a 20-incher like this one right here. See if I can get this guy unhooked. I'll show him to you, and we'll get him back in the water. Look at that. Came unhooked really easy right there. What an awesome fish. Great eater if we were gonna keep some, but big, thick, healthy fish. A great way to wrap up the day. Man, I'll tell you what, pick up some of these Bandit crankbaits. They're something else. They're not just for the Great Lakes. You get out in a situation like what we're in today, and it's been one after another. I mean, this has just been a ball, and they target big fish. If you're chasing big fish, man, I don't know if there's anything a whole lot better than a Bandit.